HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents Beer Money, A Tale of the Iowa City Beer Mafia, by S.C. Sherman, read by Adam Barr. Forward. The Northside neighborhood of Iowa City, Iowa, has a long history and a checkered past. The following is a tale of Iowa's heritage, but it is also a much larger story, an American story, that illustrates our passionate individuality and the struggles that go with it. This story is wrought with entrepreneurialism, connected neighborhoods, sharp divisions along the lines of politics, country of origin, customs, language, and religion. It is a story of just how difficult the details of our beautiful melting pot were in the past and still are today. The tale found in this book is classified as historical fiction, which can mean many things. What it means to me and this book is that the vast majority of major events really happened. The overwhelming majority of characters actually lived in Iowa City and were part of the happenings you will soon discover. Historical fictions are full of educated guesses, and this one is no different. I endeavored to portray the story dramatically as well as factually. Thanks to many wonderful historians who've gone before and archived so much detailed information that made my goal achievable. Enjoy a tale of blood and beer in America's heartland. Author's Note. My romance with the north side of Iowa City, Iowa started in the fall of 1988. I was an 18-year-old freshman at the University of Iowa. I spent orientation with a couple of other Iowa boys in Burge Hall, located on North Clinton Street. My first act as a resident of Iowa City would forever tie me to the story I now share with you all these years later. I committed a crime. The very same crime committed by the characters in my book. I broke the state laws of Iowa and illegally purchased and consumed beer. My new friends and I walked, since we had no vehicle, to a quick-trip gas station formerly located at the corner of Market and Lynn Street. I had no idea it was sitting right between what had been Englert's City Brewery and Graff's Union Brewery. We simply wanted some beer, like thousands of young lads who had gone before us. We were undeterred that the state of Iowa had declared that at age 18 we were not allowed to buy or drink beer. We had no idea people had broken the law and fought for their right to drink beer more than 100 years before us at that very same location. Open a bottle of your favorite beer and enjoy the story of the North Side that is a fascinating part of Iowa City history, and learn of the deeply rich heritage that is literally under the streets. FYI, I've discovered that many people do not know the term teetotaler. This term is frequently used in the story. It stood for people who were completely abstinent and drank zero alcohol. They became known as teetotalers, which derived from tea for total and totaler for total abstinence. Also, you will find the word bohemian used a few times, which is a more period-accurate term for people who would commonly be called Czech today. 1. November 5th, 1881, Iowa City, Iowa. Anton Stein applied more grease to his unruly shock of dark hair in an attempt to tame it. He crooked his neck and hunched his shoulders to better see himself in the mirror that was obviously hung too low for his height. He wet his fingertips with his tongue and straightened his mustache. With a final glance, he adjusted his suit coat and rechecked each pocket to be sure of their contents. Inhaling deeply, he exited the small room containing only a single bed, a small 3-drawer dresser, and the mirror. The single window was trimmed with white lace, and birds were announcing a glorious day just outside. Mrs. Spring ran a respectable boarding house on Dubuque Street, which was the heart of Iowa City. She worked hard and kept a clean establishment that regular travelers returned to again and again. Spring Boarding House was known for an affordable room with a hot breakfast in the morning and a pleasant landlady. No one asked what happened to Mrs. Spring's husband, The story was he died back east before she made her way to the frontier. She was no longer thin of body, and her hair was always pulled back, which showed much more gray than it used to. She heard the heavy footsteps of a man coming down the stairs. She knew who it was. He was the last one to rise. All her other boarders had already gone at a respectable hour. It was 8 o'clock, and a man coming down at this hour was peculiar, as if he was sick or a man of leisure. She took him for neither, which made her wonder. At the sight of him dressed elaborately in a full dress suit, she gasped, "Oh, my, Mr. Stein, don't you look dapper today?" "Thank you, ma'am. I'll take breakfast." "I'm sorry, but breakfast has already been served. All I have for you is coffee. Would you like a cup?" His stare hardened at the landlady, and his steely eyes caused a chill to run up the matron's spine. I have hot coffee. Maybe a biscuit?" she stuttered. His cold stare gradually turned to a strained smile. "Thank you, Mum. I'll be on my way." "Yes, Mr. Stein. Please come again," she said, though it was obvious she didn't mean it. Mr. Stein placed a stylish round hat upon his head and carefully tipped the bill to Mrs. Spring as he promptly strode out the front door. "Whew!" Mrs. Spring exhaled loudly, glad he was gone. Not many people made her nervous, but that man did. She went to the window and watched him making his way south toward Market Street. Her gaze lingered until he disappeared from her view. Something about him just felt off. It wasn't because of the divorce business either. If truth would ever be told, Mrs. Spring's husband hadn't died back east. She'd left him and all the beatings that went with being his wife. She'd made her way out west and started a new life in Iowa. It was simply easier to tell people he had died. There was no judgment in that. Anton Stein walked straight and tall like a man who knew what he was about. Something about wearing a fine suit just made you stand taller. He ducked down an alley and came back out on the street front right where he meant to. He paused for a moment and peered through the front glass of Luce's shoe shop. Several men inside were hard at their craft. He was looking for one man in particular. It didn't take long, and he spotted his father-in-law. Peter Hess was a well-liked man with a careful way about him. His gray hair and sweet disposition meant almost everyone instantly enjoyed his company. He was meticulously working at his bench with a hammer, gently tapping the sole of a leather shoe held in a bracket before him. He did not notice his son-in-law across the street. Mr. Stein stared with contempt for a moment, wishing he could see the look on his self-righteous face when he found out. His vision was interrupted when his stomach growled loudly. He unconsciously put his hand to it. "Dang Mrs. Spring and her breakfast," he muttered. He was hungry, and the smell of bread baking down the street made it worse. He turned to go, as he'd seen all he was hoping for anyway. Mr. Stein made his way directly toward the smell. He didn't glance up at the simple sign overhead stating Union Bakery. He let the door shut behind him. No one else was in the bakery save the man behind the counter. He was a stout man in his 50s and had the round look of a healthy baker. The baker raised his gaze at the sound of the door and with a glance realized he did not know his patron. A grand smile came across his face and he waved his flour-covered hands. "Welcome to the Union Bakery, my friend. I am Alexis Bushnagel and everything we bake is delicious. What would you like?" Mr. Stein approached the counter and carefully admired the selections like a man picking his last meal. After some time, Mr. Bushnagel pointed to a few items. "This is sourdough, that one is cinnamon, and that is French pastry. I've been working on it with my good friend, Mr. Bloom. He was born in France. He says we are very nearly perfect." Mr. Stein nodded at the pastry with a smile. "I've never had a French pastry, perfect or not. Today's the day to try it." "Fantastic." The baker carefully slid the large pastry onto a paper.
10 cents.
Mr. Stein took a coin from his vest pocket and paid the baker. He promptly took his pastry and turned to leave without a word. As the door was closing behind him, the baker hollered,
"Come back and let me know what you think of my pastry."
Mr. Stein gave a sideways glance at the single-story house next to the bakery and turned his back, making his way to the Union Public House only a few steps away. Once inside, he spotted a man behind the bar in a white apron. He appeared to be counting beer casks that lined the back wall. The room was empty, as it should be at this time of day. Most men were working. The man behind the bar noticed his presence. "Good day to you, sir," he said with a fine baritone. Mr. Stein stepped up to the bar and set his pastry out before him. The bartender approached. "That's a fine pastry. Al's very nearly got it perfected, or so he says. What can I get you to wash it down? I'm boiling some sausage if you want some meat to go with it. But that won't be ready for a bit. I have a pot of hot coffee, and of course we have the best beer in town."
"I'll take a beer, thank you,"
Mr. Stein said. "Never too early for a glorious Kraft Golden Brew, I always say." The bartender laughed and went about his business of pouring the suds. He returned and placed the beer before Mr. Stein. It was a beautiful golden color with bubbles rising to the top, just a slight foam on the surface. "There you go, sir."
"Thank you,"
Mr. Stein said. "I don't know you. From out of town?"
"Yes, I'm from Cedar Rapids. My wife's family lives here and we are in town on some legal matters."
"Well, my name is Max Geiger. My great-uncle Anton founded this brewery with his friend Simeon Hotz, and let me tell you, it's the best one in town." He stuck out his hand. Mr. Stein shook the bartender's hand firmly without a word. "I know almost everyone on the North Side. Who is your wife's family?" Mr. Stein glanced out the window, suddenly uncomfortable with all the conversation.
"The Hess family is my wife's family."
"Yes, I know them. Fine people. And you are—"
"I am Anton Stein. I married their daughter, Lizzie. Do you have a paper I could read while I eat my pastry and enjoy my beer?"
"Why, yes, sir." Max reached behind the bar and handed the paper to Mr. Stein. "Here you go, sir." He laid the day's copy of the Iowa Post on the bar. "It's half in German, half in English. Enjoy." Max had bartended long enough he knew when to walk away, but there was something about this man. All dressed up like he was going to a wedding or a funeral, and Max had heard of neither on that day. His attire was definitely something strange for so early in the morning on a weekday, but to each his own. Mr. Stein carefully ate his pastry and enjoyed his beer while Max kept on with his inventory. He knew he had to have the sausage ready by noon and prepare for a steady crowd of hungry workers the rest of the day. Mr. Stein and his pastry didn't matter in the slightest. Mr. Stein was savoring his last bite of pastry when the front door burst open. A serious-looking man in a white shirt and a dark vest closed the door behind him. His sleeves were rolled up, his open collar showing the dark, curly hair of his chest. He strode through the public space and went straight behind the counter to speak with Max. "Are we ready? Sausage smells good. Ida is bringing a huge pot of kraut and Alexis is bringing over bread, as usual." The man had a strong voice. He was obviously all business, and he scanned the room with his penetrating eyes, suddenly noticing the man at the bar decked out in a full suit. "Hello, sir. I don't know you. May I introduce myself? I am Conrad Graff. This is my place. May I ask you a question?"
"Yes, sir, of course,"
Mr. Stein said, clearly nervous. "What is a man dressed as fine as you doing in here at this time of day?"
"I am in town with my wife for a brief time," Mr. Stein said, glancing at the door.
"May I be of service? I know everyone in town and am well connected. Are you in town on business?" Conrad asked, with a quizzical look on his face.
"No, sir,"
Mr. Stein answered, and offered nothing more. Conrad's curiosity was obviously piqued. "What do you do, sir?" Mr. Stein again looked out the window. After a long pause, he said,
I used to work for Magnus Brewers in Cedar Rapids.
The corner of his left eye twitched a bit. Yes, I know Magnus. What did you do for them?
I was in the caves.
Oh, good work in the summertime. Cool down there.
Yes, it is cool.
Mr. Stein turned his back to Conrad and shuffled slowly out the front door. Conrad and Max watched until he was gone. Then Conrad asked Max, What's the deal with that guy? I don't know. Kind of strange. Are you bringing up a few more casks? How many? Maybe 10. We are fine from midday, but later we will need some more. Later on, they'll be thirsty. I will send them over, Conrad said, marching off to his next task. Max threw away the pastry paper and wiped down the bar where the odd fellow had stood. He discovered a penny left as a tip. With a smile, Max tucked it into his pocket. Mr. Stein left the public house and turned a hard right, making his way past the bakery to the simple house next door. He stepped behind the bushes near the back entrance, leaned up against the clapboards, and exhaled slowly, looking back toward the alley. 2 boys walked down the alley. They each carried a school pail, and Mr. Stein could see their breath in the cold November air. The temperature was hovering around freezing, and the bright sun and absolute stillness made it quite pleasant outside to those accustomed to the Midwestern climate. Sam could hear the soft sounds of a woman singing inside the house. He swore under his breath and muttered, What the hell does she have to sing about? At 25 years old, Lizzie was stunning in her beauty. She had blonde hair, a shapely figure, and a sweet countenance that endeared people to her instantly. She hugged her daughter tight to her chest. Lizzie knew that at 5 years old, she'd already seen too much. Her blonde locks fell around her shoulders, and her little blue eyes shone like a lake bathed in sunlight. Her son brooded. His eyes were always dark and downcast. Ever since their father had died, things had not gone well. She feared he would never recover and be the giggling boy he once was. She'd been known as the Widow Gehring since her childhood sweetheart had died suddenly from an accident with a horse. She was too young to be thought of that way. When a new suitor had shown up so willing to accept her children and love her, she quickly remarried. Lizzie discovered her mistake on her wedding night, as her new husband apparently enjoyed inflicting pain upon her more than wedding night intimacy. She had her first black eye the next morning. Lizzie learned a few months later that his name wasn't even Stein. It was Skirecki. Everything he'd promised her had been a lie. He had no money and seemed to only find enjoyment in punching and kicking her. She had hoped and prayed it would get better, but it did not. When he began beating her children as well, she knew she had to do something. Her friends and even her parents told her to endure it, but she knew she could not. Divorce was the only answer, or run away, but the thought of leaving and losing her family was too much. She decided to try divorce, despite the shame it would bring. There was no other option, and now it was done. Only 2 days earlier, she'd stood in the Johnson County Court before Judge Hedges and told her tale as best she could. The scar on her lip and the yellowing bruise on her cheek helped illustrate the dire situation. Lizzie couldn't help but smile as her divorce request was granted. Her smile disappeared when she looked across the courtroom and locked eyes with Anton. They were cold, dead eyes. She was afraid. Judge Hedges saw Anton's eyes as well. He slammed his gavel. I also do hereby grant an injunction that Anton Stein not be allowed near the home listed or any future homes in which Lizzie Stein may be living. The judge pointed right at Anton. You stay away from her. Do you understand?
Yes, Your Honor. I'll stay away,
Anton said as he exited the courtroom. And with that, he was gone. A weight lifted from Lizzie's chest, with a requisite amount of fear lingering in the back of her mind from his haunting stare. She took her children and moved back into her parents' house right next to the Union Bakery. The divine aroma was enough to stay forever. It was time to make a fresh start, even if it meant she never married again. She decided to live an old maid for her children and nothing else. Her mother joined them in the front room and sat down near her grandchildren with a book in her hand. "I have a story to read you," she said. Lizzie smiled. "Thanks, Mother. I'll be in the kitchen." She picked up her water can and began watering the flowering plants that sat on the window ledge. Lizzie didn't even notice that she was humming a tune. Did she dare entertain happiness? She heard the back door open, and assuming it was her father, she turned. "Hi, Papa." She screamed a blood-curdling scream at the sight of Anton Stein. He stood completely still, with his finger up to his mouth to force her silence. "What do you want? You aren't supposed to be here," she cried. "Mother, he's here." The house was small enough anyone talking loudly could be heard in the other rooms. "I want my journal and the picture of my mother. Nothing more," he said with the icy cold look that was his way. "It's in the other room. I'll get it. You stay right here, but then you must go." She went to the front room and grabbed the journal and the picture from the shelf. She motioned to her mother to stay where she was with the children. Both of them looked terrified in her arms. They'd seen Anton's outbursts before. Lizzie gave them a forced smile and re-entered the kitchen. She handed Anton the journal and the photograph. He accepted them and tucked them into the inside pocket of his suit jacket. In one motion, he withdrew a long knife he'd concealed under his coat. With no more words, and in a movement as swift as a cat, he was on Lizzie. She screamed a terrible sound as his right hand raised high and slammed down hard. The blade entered the left side of her chest just above the breast, crushing through her ribcage and piercing her lung. She continued to scream as the knife was withdrawn and stabbed into her body a dozen more times. Her life's blood flowed like a torrent down her body, spraying the floor. Lizzie pushed away with all her remaining strength and lost her footing in the slippery mess covering the wood floor. She landed on her back. Anton was instantly on her with his knee pressing hard against her chest. She blinked and faded to darkness as a chortle emanated from her throat. With a handful of Lizzie's golden hair in his left hand, Anton kept sawing with the knife in his right until his mother-in-law screamed and hit him with full force. He fell from Lizzie's body and focused on Mrs. Hess, who stood before him. He regained his footing and slashed her way with his bloody reaper. "No, no!" She put up her arms to protect herself. Anton felt the meat on her forearm cut like a beefsteak with each swipe. She cried out and dropped her arms. With a slashing motion from left to right, he clipped her throat. Blood sprayed forth between her fingers as she clutched her wound. He heard a strange whimpering sound and turned to see Lizzie's children staring at the scene. Mrs. Hess took her opportunity and bolted out the front door. Mr. Stein could hear her screaming for all the world to take notice. "Murder! My daughter's been murdered! Help! Help!" Mr. Stein glanced down at himself and could see his fine suit was covered in bright red blood. He turned his attention to the two children who stood motionless, staring at the remains of their mother. He laid them side by side in the front room after slitting their throats. Peering down at them, he was surprised that he felt nothing at all. The noise was growing out front. Mr. Stein stepped out the front door and stood for a moment, staring at the gathering crowd. Mrs. Hess lay on the ground, blood all around her. Several men were attending to her wounds. He was a picture of terror, dripping in the blood of his slain victims, carrying a large knife in his hand. The bulk of the crowd stared at him in horror, an image they'd not soon forget. He realized the knife was still in his hand. He raised it and waved it at the crowd, menacing their advance. Several women screamed and covered the eyes of their children from the carnage. Several adult men had arrived, and they froze at the sight of Mr. Stein covered in blood, brandishing a large knife. Mr. Stein could see they didn't know what to do. Should they charge him? Go get a gun? Wait for the sheriff? He knew his time was short, but he smiled at his success. All who saw it were forever haunted by that demonic smile. Mr. Stein stepped back into the home as Dr. Lytle arrived. Anton reached into his pants pocket and removed a small glass vial with a corked top. He pulled the cork and tossed it aside. He put the vial to his lips and threw his head back as if it was a shot of whiskey. With not a drop remaining, Mr. Stein dropped the small bottle as the acid found its way home. He stood in the doorway to the kitchen for a moment. Dr. Lytle pushed by him and went to Lizzie. The doctor glanced up in time to see Mr. Stein cough hard, and blood dripped from his mouth. Without warning, his eyes rolled back in his head, leaving only the white showing, and he fell flat on his back, convulsing like a man with seizures. After a few moments, his body relaxed, and Mr. Stein never moved again. His eyes glossed over in death, frothy blood dripping from his mouth and nose. Dr. Lytle glanced sideways when a man in a uniform stepped up next to him. He was a young man, new to town, but eager to do well and make a name for himself in law enforcement. "Who might you be?" asked Dr. Lytle with a sideways glance. "We've not met."
"Deputy Parrott. Samuel Parrott. I just moved here from Pennsylvania."
"Well, welcome to town, son." Dr. Lytle chuckled a little with a wicked, dry sense of humor he'd picked up during the war. "Have you ever seen a dead body?"
Yes, one time," Deputy Parrott said. "My grandpa in a coffin."
"Get ready. This ain't nothing like that," Dr. Lytle said, leading the young officer into the kitchen. Young Deputy Parrott's face blanched whiter than white, and his jaw hung slack for a few moments. He'd obviously never seen anything as horrific as the scene before them.
"Doc, he cut her head clean off."
"Not all the way. There is a slight bit of tissue on the right side there," Dr. Lytle said matter-of-factly, like the seasoned doctor that he was.
"Holy Mary, Mother of God."
"Yes, Jesus and Joseph, too. Did you see the two kids in the other room?" The young constable looked into the other room and abruptly ran to the back door. He slipped in the blood, but caught himself on the table and made it out the back door just in time to vomit in the bushes. He wiped his mouth and shut the door behind him. Dr. Lytle gripped Lizzie's head with both hands and placed it more where it should be, on her neck. Parrott heaved again, but kept it down. Dr. Lytle glanced up at him. "I think you need a task. You better get the sheriff and send for Dr. Clapp. I'll need his help. Also get Father Edmonds, and somebody better go find Peter Hess. His family's been destroyed. He should know straight away. News like this will spread like wildfire." 2. Deputy Parrott stepped out of the little house into the cold, clear day. He stood motionless for a moment on the top step of the porch. A large crowd had formed, and he could see Mrs. Hess was already in a wagon and heading toward the hospital. He noticed Deputy Sheriff Tom Farrell pushing his way through the crowd, and he was glad for it. He was at a loss for words, and he knew Farrell would know what to do. He was as tough as they came. He'd served at Gettysburg, and after that, nothing shook him. He stopped at the bottom step and sized up the look of the young constable. "How bad is it? You look like you've seen a ghost," Farrell said.
"It's bad. Worst I've ever seen. They're all dead. The young mother and her two children. They just took the old mother to the hospital, all cut up."
"Who did it?"
"He's dead too. Dr. Lytle is inside. He says it was the husband. He killed himself with a poison. He's in the front room."
Farrell nodded. "All right. We need to take care of these bodies. All right?"
"Yes, sir."
Parrott looked like he wanted to say more. "Spit it out, man. What is it?" Parrott took a step closer and whispered,
"He cut her head off. I saw her spine sticking out of her neck."
Farrell exhaled and shook his head. I'm sorry, young man. The first...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?